All right, and welcome to the show. This is the Weekly Jargon. I am Jose Rodriguez. We are absent Abel Perez, and we're also absent Rohi, which he's on his way. But meanwhile, we do have a guest here with us. This is Justin Poor from JP Advising. I'll let him introduce himself. And we're going to have a really good show today. Rohi will be making his way in, but go ahead, Justin. Give us a little bit about your background there.
Hi, Jose, and viewers and listeners. My name's Justin Poor. I've been a financial planner and advisor for 25 years, and I have 2 degrees in accounting, a master's in business administration. I have 3 securities licenses, a real estate license, a life insurance license, and just an all-around fun person to enjoy talking economics and finance. So I'm looking forward to being part of the show here today.
Well, that certainly deserves an applause. So we'll go ahead and make sure we get you that applause going.
Thank you. I like flowers.
Yes, and that is quite a bit of accolades you hold. And more importantly, especially in today's economic environment, we couldn't be in a better time to take advantage of some of these strategies that a lot of the advisors are advising their clients, right? So today's show, we're going to focus on, providing some advice. But, a disclaimer here goes that part of the advice that I would be giving you is my personal advice. I'm certainly not an attorney. I'm not an advisor, although we have one here. Again, I believe that we're not soliciting. We're actually just trying to provide you from our own personal experiences. So I want to make sure we get that clear. I'm sure when Rohi gets here, he'll provide you the same statement. JP, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're here to provide as much information as possible without necessarily directing you to do anything in particular. This isn't a solicitation or a sale of any particular product or service. This is just very, very informational based, and we hope that it's valuable to you.
So before we dive into any of the financial advising and or the volatility that we are experiencing today, JP, let me start by giving a big shout out to the Madera High robotics team. This is their 3rd world championship that they have.
Wow.
And just you put some context on this. Again, Madera being the heart of California, and looking at the population and our demographic, one would think, well, how does little Madera get themselves on the world map when it comes to robotics? And it's not just once, twice, but a three-peat. And that
impressive.
is something to really, it just speaks volumes to hear that. Yeah. So a big shout out to the Madera Robotics. You've put our city, you put our county on the world map when it comes to that. And this is to tell you that it's not about the money that's poured into these programs, but the willingness of these students to want to be able to make something big and put their names out there. So that just goes to tell you that if you have a desire to achieve a goal, you can certainly do that.
Yeah, that's great dedication.
Right, yeah. Right. So with that, we're going to go and start off and kind of break some ice. Before we get into that, we also like some of the rituals that we do here at the Weekly Jargon is we'd like to start off with these questions, these random questions, right? And the random questions are just to break off some ice before we get started. Meanwhile, it gives Rohi some time to get here. But anyhow, the question that I have for you, JP, and again, we're both going to answer it, right?
All right, yeah.
Would you date a person that cheated in every past relationship but promises they won't cheat on you?
That's an interesting thing. When I was growing up, my father always told me, he says, people don't necessarily really change that well. People are like tigers with stripes, and stripes don't change on the tiger. So when it comes to someone who has the repeat offending, tends to repeat offend again. So I would say no. The promises are only as good as those stripes on the tiger.
Well, I like the way you put that. And frankly, I would agree that sometimes, they call us creatures of habit, right? And we like to follow certain patterns, right? So I believe that that may be the case. So for me, you'd have to convince me otherwise. Maybe some money on the table or something, right? But
now if she's a rich old woman, that might be a little different story. We like
cheat
trust.
all you want.
We
right?
get trust for that.
That's right. That's right. Well, and again, I think like you said, I like how you put it, tigers with stripes, right? And a lot of the times, it's not just in relationships. You see it a lot, and even in finance, you'll fall in the same trap over and over and over, and that's because you've been conditioned to do that without really resetting and seeing, well, wait a minute, I'm walking down this sidewalk. I continue to see this hole, but somehow I just happen to slip into it. Why? Is it the mindset? And when it comes to finances, I think it's no different. And people seem to follow that same routine and pattern of putting themselves in debt and not necessarily having any additional funds to be able to invest. And this is kind of what we're gonna segue to, right? We're gonna segue to the financial advice. So now we know what's going on. This whole tariff deal that we're hearing about. I mean, obviously, markets have reacted pretty negatively. Yeah. We've seen, being in the mortgage industry, I think we talked about this last week, is we saw a little dip in the rates. So there was some improvement and then right back up, it shot right back up. So those kind of reactions obviously trigger the market. Here we go. We got our latest member here. Rohi, let's go ahead and give him a round of applause here. No worries. So, Rohi, we're talking about the financial environment that we see, the volatility more importantly. But before we get started, we wanted to give you an opportunity to answer.
Question.
I want to hear Rohi's answer.
So we want to hear you. I mean, the majority of our fans, by the way, folks, are Rohi's fans.
Yeah.
He's got thousands and thousands of gun enthusiasts and people that follow him. But let's go. They probably want to hear from Rohi.
Oh, geez.
Would you date a person, Rohi, that cheated every past relationship but promises that they won't cheat on you?
You know what's tough, and I heard your guys' answers. I think it's tough because you want to always give somebody a second chance, or a third, or a fourth. And I know coming from the business side, that's I know it's the same but different. But when you think of a business relationship, it can be the same way, right? I mean, if I give somebody money or I loan somebody money and they burn you, do you want to do it again? And sadly, I kind of give them a chance, So I would probably fall in that the pit of giving that person a chance.
Right, and I mean it's a human nature. Right?
That's what I was going to say. It's human nature to give everybody a chance.
The empathy. I think we try to put ourselves in their shoes and on, but at the end of the day, I think. More often than none, I think you see that repeated pattern, right? And that's we were also talking, and right before you walked in, we were discussing how people tend to follow that same pattern also on their finances.
Yeah.
And here we're going to get some insight from JP on what he sees with some of these folks and what strategies they can do to help them get themselves in a better financial position moving forward.
Yeah, so I would say, really honestly, the biggest thing for anyone is to just get started. You have to save something. I think we all were children at some point in time, and we all had chores, and we all were given some sort of reward for doing our chores. And I think now that we're adults, it's important to recognize that our chores is our work. And when we work, we're being rewarded with our paychecks. And when we have our paychecks, how do we reward ourselves? It's not going to Disneyland every 2 days. It's not, spending the money on the Netflixes and the going out to eats. It's about being able to even just save $25 a month into a savings account automatically. That's how you reward yourself. That's how you can start beginning that savings process. And I think a lot of people fail to realize how much $25 can really help someone. It doesn't have to be a large amount of money to make you feel like you are accomplishing something for yourself. And, I built my business helping people save $25 to $50 a month. And that's kind of the wildest thing is 25 years later, I have clients that were giving me $25 to $50. And then 3 years later, they said, okay, here's $100 a month. And then another 3 years later, here's $250 a month. And they rewarded themselves over time. And all of a sudden, they wake up 20 years later and they say, hey, I have money. Where did that come from? And it's a process of finding a way to reward yourself by saving and how much better you feel by actually seeing something. And, in grade school, we were even taught compound interest, where, hey, if you make interest on your money, interest makes money on your interest. And so when you start seeing the step up effect of even just that $25 turns to $25.25, and then the next month it's $25.53, and you're like, well, how did I get that extra 3 cents more? Well, that's compounding interest. So when you help yourself save, that is basically the foundation of creating wealth. You can't be wealthy without having to create it. And so I think that's a big step in the right direction for a lot of people.
Now, I'll ask this question because there's a misconception of wealth. And when people think of wealth, their first visual is like these, suit and tie bankers and what have you, mansions. But it's not necessarily that. I think if you look at, like you said, you can accumulate wealth over a period of time. I think the biggest hurdle that I see with a lot of Americans, because to be American is to go get that Netflix, to go spend that money, to go get that coffee, to go get that. And also, let's save a little bit of money, but that's not your priority, because the condition that we have here is consume, and it's repeated over and over through media. You see it all the time, whether it's radio, these clearances, Black Friday, and what have you, Christmas sales.
Furniture stores, they're always going out of business.
Even these religious holidays, like Easter, there's sales for that. There's a lot. The bunnies out there selling stuff. Even though I don't know how, but
the Cadbury.
Yeah, that's right. So, Rohi, your thoughts on that? How do you see are people really able to?
Being in retail, my job is to trick you into spending that money you're saving. So it's a battle, but I think I would ask you the question, JP, when you advise people like that, do you almost feel like do you have to kind of treat them as like tricking them to forget about the money, right? Because if I'm thinking about, oh, look at my statement, it's growing, and now I have $10,000, what could I spend that on?
Right.
Because I know, nowadays everything is credit card, so it's a little different, but it wasn't too long ago that, used to be a lot more cash flowing around.
Yeah.
And I remember that was always the trick I would have is, if you broke a 20 or whatever and you get home and you had a couple dollars in change, like you would just put it in a box, right?
Sure.
And you just you forget it. And then, like you said, come back a month later because I need to maybe pay the pizza guy, and you're like, oh my gosh.
There's something in that
got a pile
box.
of money,
How'd that happen?
not getting interest, unfortunately.
Right.
But do you feel like that's kind of a good strategy?
That's a great point. I think, just a lot of points to that is our phones and the access to information has broken down society's ability to save. Because if you can see it, you want it. If you can see it, you can have it. If you can touch a button on your phone and transfer that money from a savings account in your bank to your checking account in just an instant, you have Venmo where people pay you and it can be transferred. I want that money today, so I'll spend that extra 30 cents or $5 or whatever it is to make sure it's in my account today. So I don't necessarily want to say it's a trick. But it's definitely something that it helps when I encourage clients to have a separate online bank account, a separate bank somewhere else, or even if you're investing with me, it's a set it and forget it. We draft that money out of the account, it goes into your other account, and it sits there. And because those statements come every month or every quarter, it's hard for people to necessarily remember they have it, right? Yeah. And so forgettery is much better than memory when it comes to saving,
What about your thoughts on some of the new platforms are trying to get people to, I think, Jose, you have a similar product like where you deposit your paychecks and kind of pay out of this interest-bearing accounts. You think is that kind of also maybe breaking down some of that savings because they're still...
Right.
There's still
and I think a lot of it is that, to your point, is people don't budget anymore. All throughout my career, one of the primary aspects is over the 25 years I've been doing this is it started with people really trying to sort out how much am I spending where and why. And now it seems like there's not so much a how much am I spending where and why, it's how much do I have left over at the end of the month that I am willing to commit to saving. I'm not going to change my standard of living because I have that standard already set. So it becomes a matter of how much do you have left over that you can commit to actually saving towards your goals. And then we break that out into put it here, put it there, do something this way that ultimately make the best sense for them at that moment for their future goals. Like bankrate.com has all the different savings vehicles of all the different bank accounts that are available out there. Most savings accounts are around 3.5% to 4%, which is really great. One that I tend to use and send out to people is through Ally Bank. It's an online, it's not a brick and mortar. You can't go to somewhere and pull a credit card out and touch your cash. But being able to establish a budget now is very difficult for people because of the variety of pricing that we see. I mean, you go to the grocery store and eggs are now all of a sudden $10 a dozen when they were $4 a dozen 2 weeks ago. Yeah. And people complain about it, but they don't necessarily stop buying eggs.
Right. Yeah.
So that's an interesting point of just being able to recognize how much do I have left over and what can I commit to savings.
It's interesting you say that. As we were talking earlier, I wanted to point out what the Consumer Price Index has done over the last almost 50 years, right?
Yeah.
And one of the amazing facts that I saw, well, not amazing, it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of detrimental to some folks, is like the amount of inflation that has increased.
Yeah.
So if you had someone living off of $100,000, that person now, because since 2020, it's risen at least 68%. So that means you have to make $168,000 to make that same type of living. And to your point about that price of the eggs and what have you, tariffs, and we hear. So the question that I have for you, JP, is a lot of this investing now, it seems to be geared towards a lot of the youth. Because when you're young, you can start early, weather some storms, kind of like what's happening today.
Sure.
You're not really going to look into that. You're going to continue to invest, buy because it's low, then essentially the markets will go back up. But what about those folks that are already like near retirement? And what about folks that are probably my age, 49, 50 years old, that are saying, well, I haven't done jack anything for the last
it's catch up. So you started the relay a little late.
So what kind of advice would you give to people that are in my demographic looking to say, look, I've everything that I've done over the last 20, 30 years has been just trying to make it by. And now that I got my neck above water, now I may be able to invest that little $25. Is it too late for them to play that game and try to make something of it within the next 15 years? Which could be retirement for them.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question because I had a meeting with a whole group of people. Unfortunately, it was at a funeral. But at this funeral, everyone was saying, Justin was the advisor for the client and this and that. And a 75-year-old came up and she says, why everybody's talking about you and this and that? Why would I at 75 need your advice? And I said, that's a really interesting question. I said, do you have grandchildren? Yes. Do you have children? Yes. Do you want to leave something for them? Do you want to have a legacy? Do you want to give them even ice cream money along the way? And she says, well, yeah. I said, well, that's why you need me, is because everyone at every stage has a goal or a desire to do something financial, whether it's give your grandkids an ice cream cone at the end of the day, or have something that they can leave behind, and you go through these steps of saying, hey, you have financial goals, create that financial goal and make progress towards attaining that. So even at 49, I'm 45. Don't let all my gray hair fool you, to those who can see.
Oh, you wouldn't have fooled me.
It's just a matter of starting. you know, and whatever that financial goal is, it's important to recognize that. You know, like you have a goal to, you know, run a marathon. You don't just go run the marathon. You build up into it. You
Oh,
know?
you don't?
No, I don't. You know, I'll pull a muscle, I'm sure. But the whole idea is that you want to be able to start. And I think a lot of the youth that you were mentioning, they get overwhelmed by what's flashy. What's, you know, do this, do that, cryptocurrencies or easy trading or this and that. And there's not a lot of substantive information about it. So it becomes a matter of they just kind of shotgun it and see what happens. Whereas opposed to, hey, maybe, you know, talk to older people and ask, hey, how did you do it? How does this work? You know, you don't have to go see a professional. But you know what? There are a lot of people, even at age 49, who are professionals at life. And you can at least tell the youth, hey, I had these struggles. I went through this. I'm 49 and I'm just starting to realize I can do this. Had I saved $25 or $50 a month all along this way, I'd be 10 times better off. So I think a lot of what people need to recognize is just starting.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's great advice there. Rohi, any thoughts on your end as far as like you see the youth now? I mean, obviously in your industry, through employees, do they want to invest in like a 401k? I'm not sure if that's something that's offered.
I think, you know, because we actually had one of our, you know, it's through AFLAC, so, you know, the services that they provide through there. And we've always had a struggle with their services because, you know, they come in and they say, don't your employees want health insurance or dental insurance? And you ask them, they go, yeah, we do. And they sit down and they say, well, okay, well, it's going to cost you $30 a month. And they're like, no, I don't want it. Like, well, but you understand, like, you know, if you needed to go to the dentist or you need to do this, that you're actually saving money, right?
Right.
So I think it's that there's a point in people where they want these things, but they don't want it on their dime sometimes.
Sure.
They want you to pay for it. And then I know as far as like a lot of the customers, it's still the credit card is still, I think, their number one destruction.
Yeah, it's called the Bank of Visa.
Yeah, you know, and some of them try to be smart, and I'll give them credit. You know, they'll try to use a debit, and you can tell, like, you know, they're like, I can move money into this account, so I can, you know, but it's scary because it'll be like, well, how much is the total? Oh, it's 130. Okay, good. I got 128 in the account, and I'm like, no, that's not good. Like, you don't need to be here, you know. So I know the struggle is real, but it's tough because, like you said, it's keeping up with the Joneses, and you know, I think it's just people struggle to I guess see the value because they can't see like 30 years from now to see that bank account that maybe has 200,000 or 300, whatever it may have,
Whatever it is. Yeah.
they can't see that value. They'd rather say, well, I'll spend the $50 extra this month instead of giving it to you, you know.
Right.
And it's kind of sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the questions that people ask me, right, is, you know, when you look at investing, right, and over time, obviously you see several indexes that have done really well. People always talk about, hey, don't invest in this, invest in an index, and you know, people follow that. But the way I look at it was everybody's investing in this index, and I mean, you're leaving something out there, right? So,
Sure.
Rohi and I, we talk a lot about precious metals, right? And we look at the rise of what's happening, especially during the inflationary
Are
environment.
you a gold bug?
Well, I'm not quite sold on it, but I got to tell you that I believe in preserving some type of wealth because you have a tangible asset that can certainly be traded for something. That's what I think the value comes in, and over the test of time, these precious metals have stayed. You know, unlike any other monetary or modern monetary policy or fiat currency, we see that these things tend to they don't last forever. They phase out after so many years. So when you ask me if I'm a gold bug, I'm not a gold bug to say that I'm preaching to buy gold, but I'm saying in general, looking at its price and what it's doing in relation to the inflation certainly makes me think that it's not a bad investment to have. Not to say that you want to go full out on it,
Sure,
but you certainly want to have some of that in your portfolio.
So
your advice on that? I mean,
you're going to really get a kick out of this one.
Here we go.
Here we go.
You're going to get a kick out of this one. I'm a big game show watcher.
Okay.
For some reason or another, that just excites me so much.
Any
And,
specific game show?
You know, I really like The Price is Right.
Okay, I like that too, yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. You
Yep.
know, so, so The Price is Right. If you watch Pluto TV or something, you got the old 1983 Bob Barker era Price is Rights are on. And sure enough, I was sitting there watching it, and they had a gold bar for the, showcase to get up on stage, and you have to say guess what the price is.
Okay.
And in 1980, the price was $800 for that gold bar.
Okay.
Okay, so that's 1983. Now, that gold bar ounce now is around $3,000.
33, yeah.
33. Yeah, we'll give you
Something,
the extra 300 for now, But the whole point is that that's only $2,500 gain over 40, 50 years now, since 1983 to now.
Yeah.
So the price increase of gold from then to now on a percentage basis is very low. Yes, it's a standard of recognizing that I have an investment into a precious metal that'll always be there. But, I end up telling people, well, how do you sliver off that slice of gold to buy your gas or to buy your eggs that are now more expensive? It's an investment for sure. But when you look at pound for pound, no pun intended.
Yeah.
The investment schedule of buying quality U.S.-based, blue chip stocks, like, places that aren't going away, ends up being a much greater growth of your wealth. And that's almost like having something intangible versus something tangible. A lot of people also don't realize that owning gold requires you to store the gold. Mm-hmm. And if you don't take possession of that gold, there's fees associated with having that gold stored somewhere else. Fort Knox, the government pays a lot of money to keep it protected, right? So there's an inherent cost with everything you do. That inherent cost is going to be having to carry all those gold bars with you when you move, or you have to pay someone to hold it for you. And that degrades that value that whole time. So as much as gold may seem intrinsically neat and whatnot, it's also something that, hey, I don't see the Aztecs around anymore, and they had fields of gold, and so you kind of wonder why get so wrapped up in precious metals. But again, it's an option. It's an opportunity for people to have something tangible, and I think that's very different. Especially in our world today where everything is intangible. You want to buy a stock, they used to give stock certificates. Now they don't. Now it's just something digital on your phone that I own a share of Disney. Well, they used to give you a certificate that was printed and nice, and you can frame it and sign it and touch it. Well, you don't have that anymore. So to some degree, gold has that precious feeling of like, hey, I could put it on my finger. I can make a sword out of it. I could put it on my hat, whatever it may be. And there's a value to that. Is that going to create you a bunch of wealth over time? Not really.
Yeah, and I don't think the argument would be to create wealth, but rather a store of wealth for that time and period, right? So the way I look at gold is, well, I mean, it may be 1980 where you see the prices right, and you're digging that. What was it? A pound of gold was $800.
Gold, little ounce of gold.
Let's just say it was $800, right? And that $800 though would buy you so much during that time.
Right.
So because of the cost of inflation, gold is like a measure of what's happening, right? So taking that $800 in today's day and age, maybe that $800 cost today is at $3,300. So that dollar that could buy you that then could still buy you the same thing here, but it's going to be more dollars, right?
Sure.
With inflation. And that's how, and I do agree with you that it's probably not going to make you wealthy. All it's going to do is preserve whatever amount of money you had at that time and freeze it, so to speak, with that value. Now, going back to your wealth, you're right. I mean, obviously there are other financial vehicles that can take you to generate, compound,
Right.
and make that wealth because you're utilizing that money in a different fashion, right? Rohi, your thoughts? I mean, I know that you buy gold, and that's part of your business, right? So when you buy it, I mean, obviously you're looking to get it at a cheaper rate, but it's only to. I mean, I'm not sure if you're selling it right back or how you guys.
No, but because people ask too when they come in to buy gold, because obviously right now when it starts moving up, people start getting interested in both buying and selling. But I always try to ask them, kind of like what you're saying is, like, what's the end goal? You know, are you buying it because you think the government's going to collapse tomorrow and the dollar's going to zero? Buy a physical gold, get a coin, stuck in your pocket, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, they just want to invest in the trend, which is gold should theoretically keep going up as inflation keeps going up. And I'll be honest, I'm usually the first guy to say, well, don't buy physical. Just go on the market and buy some gold or silver
Buy the spot
futures.
price,
and,
yeah.
just buy it, and you can sell it tomorrow, and you can buy it again the next day, and whatever you want to do. And with very little penalty, where if you go buy physical, like you said, I mean, first off, there's spot, and you're going to pay above spot, and then if you sell it the next day, then you're going to get less than spot, and so in that 1 day period, you've lost money, you know.
Right.
So it's kind of hard. I mean, because people still are in that like you said, that physical nature. I want to hold it. I want to touch it. I want to be in control of it. But especially now when you're saying like an ounce, I mean, it's literally the size of a quarter. That's $3,000. Like, you could lose that, drop it, somebody could find it, and I would rather have it that money essentially in a stock that's a little bit harder for somebody to kind of get at. But I guess my question to you, JP, was some of that gold in its natural, I guess, movement up. Like 10 years from now, I don't think gold's going to be $500 or $800 again. Like,
No,
it should continue to grow.
We don't see gold going down often.
I guess with some of the volatility of the stocks, do you prefer yourself, and again, not as advice to other people, but do you prefer stocks that you may see just steady growth, 2% over the next 10 years, or do you prefer more dividend kind of stocks? Or
I'm a big fan of getting paid on getting paid.
Okay.
So it's and that's through dividend creation, through yield. Buying something like gold doesn't pay you anything.
Sure.
It just sits there, and it's like a lump on the log. It's like, oh boy, I hope it goes up tomorrow.
Yeah.
But other investments have yield. Even a savings account has a yield, and so that compound interest is important to me. Where you build into getting paid again on your money. And when you get paid again, you can choose what to do with that extra paycheck. You can buy more gold if you want. You can invest in more things that'll give you more money. You can redirect that extra money that your investments made to something else, even if that's buying something for yourself. And it's kind of neat to see the process of how compound interest can compound more successful wealth in investing for you. So a segue to kind of the economy is on the gold is I kind of know when the economy is going bad, when normal people get out their pan and pickaxes and they start going up the coarse gold and looking for, they're panning for it. So, we saw, I had clients back in 2008, 2009 in that financial crisis, that they actually went out and bought dredgers for the lakes, and they were out there dredging, and they thought that was a fun weekend for them, and they'd come up with hardly anything to pay back themselves. But it was, it seemed like, hey, when the economy is going bad and things are going in a certain direction, all of a sudden the pans come out, the pickaxes come out.
Guns, people are buying guns. Right?
Yeah, people are buying guns, so they can stake their claim somewhere, All of a sudden it becomes Oregon Trail, but I don't see that happening now. And I think a lot of it is that recognition that, gold has a value and a store of it, but it's just like tin prices and can prices, recycling in the state of California. So, when you see people out there picking out cans and throwing them in there and and there's a long line at the recycler, the economy might not be doing that great because there's a price for that money coming back. So it's interesting to to, you said, what do I like? I like getting paid again. And I think most people like getting paid again. And if you can get paid again and again and again and again, that's how you really put a smile on your face, because you see your investments, your work paying itself back again.
So JP, and we'll get to some of the meat and potatoes of what's taking place today, right? So here's what we're going to ask you a question.
That costs a lot of money for meat and potatoes. I'm a filet eater.
So with that, we see this whole thing with tariffs, and we see the reactions that have taken place over the last month. And frankly, you've seen the volatility, and that's the basis of our show today, is this volatility that we're seeing today. You talked about, when you see people bringing out the dredgers and the pans and what have you. Do you see that happening today? And what course of action should people look at, especially when you see people that are probably looking to retire? We have more baby boomers retiring daily for the next 5 years.
Yeah, 10,000 people a day.
A day for the next 5 years is where I think it'll peak, or not peak, but that's where it phases out. But what do you say to those people that are very uncomfortable with the idea of saying, well, shoot, I had a really good portfolio up until this last month, and now I don't know how I'm going to make it. And if I pull out, I may be penalized, or, obviously if you're 59 and a half, you're not, but would it be wise for them? And what do you see? What are your thoughts? And again, these are our personal experiences. As an advisor, obviously, you have some limitations on what you can say, and you've already disclosed that. But what can you say to the folks out there that are looking at this today? What kind of advice can we give them?
The best advice is calmer heads always prevail. Over the long term. And long-term now is kind of wild, because long-term used to be anything 5 years plus. Nowadays, long-term seems to be 2 years plus. The timing in which people are capable of understanding time has shortened, especially when you get older. As you get older, the end line starts getting a little closer and closer and closer. What I can definitely say is what we're experiencing now is a lot of noise. The noise that we hear creates emotion, and then that emotion leads to poor, irrational decision making. When you sell out, you've locked in your losses. If you don't sell, then as my mentor says, things that have gone up before will go up again. And that's not always the case, but it's the concept of recognizing that the more you can keep emotion out of your investments and out of your decision making when it comes to financial planning, the better off you are. I had a lunch actually with a portfolio manager with Invesco, the Comstock Fund. It's a large cap value fund, and I was talking to him yesterday. And I said, "What's your thought on all this?" And I made the comment to him. I said, "I'm a big believer that markets are efficient. That means that the market will always be valued appropriately based on the news that it's receiving day in and day out." And his comment was that markets are efficient over the long term. What we're seeing now is inefficiencies in noise, and so when you have to decide, hey, what are my goals and how long do I want those goals, how far out are those goals? It's a matter of being strong enough to weather the storms. I think we've all seen the movies where you got the boats are sinking and you got the one captain, I'm going to make it. Right now we got to be those captains. I'm going to make it.
and you're right. I think a lot of the noise does cause some waves, especially when this volatility really hits home, right? And I understand that calmer heads do prevail, but I'm just thinking in the short period of time where I'm now 62, 63 years old. I was thinking of retiring next year. I just lost 20% of my portfolio.
Sure.
What do I do? Do I pull? Do I stick it out? I mean, here's this captain saying, stick it out, stick it out. But I mean, if you recall, and look, I don't like to bring back history, but I am.
Sure,
You know,
yeah.
if you recall, back in the early 2000s, was it Enron? You remember Enron? And that whole thing.
What a mess.
What a mess.
They hired a bunch of MBAs to make sure that they made money instead of anybody else.
And you know, a lot of these folks that were looking to retire also
Yeah.
faced the same thing. 50, 40, 60% of their investments.
Sure. I think a lot of that is diversification. You know, you have to be able to, you know, there's a reason if you put all your money on the Titanic, well, everybody lost on that one, you know. So maybe they should have invested in some more lifeboats, you know.
Yeah.
And so being diversified is really important, and not having, quote unquote, we all hear with Easter being the case, don't put all your eggs in one basket, because sure enough, they'll all fall out, right? So diversifying and diversification is very important. And recognizing that you want to, I'm not saying hang on forever, you want to at least recognize what's quality. And when you can have the ability to see, hey, you know what, I'm not invested in Uncle Joe's Diner with Uncle Joe, who has, you know, cancer, and we hope that his business survives. We're investing in Mickey Mouse, and Mickey Mouse has been around for a long time. You know, so you have to look at what's quality, and sometimes that's hard to determine, and that's where you lean on some of the advice of not, you know, kind of going through the research and the analysis of, does this company make money? Does it pay money back? Does it have proper expenses for its income and things like that? So, you know, you don't invest in businesses without a business plan. So you want to invest in your future with a future plan. And how do you diversify that out? You know, throwing darts on a dartboard sometimes works better than knowing what you're doing. You know, sometimes I say I better be lucky than good. But you still have to have some value in understanding what is good and what is bad. And if things in your financial world are bad or not doing so well, and there's not a reason why you're keeping it or having it or whatnot, you know, maybe it's time to shed that and look at something more valuable, or something that has some more staying power, or something that can be more diversified or whatnot. So, you know, my mom, she says, if I haven't touched it in 6 months, it's getting thrown out. And so my stepdad is constantly cleaning his desk, because my mom has literally gone to his desk and just picked up stuff and threw it away. So, you know, there's means of understanding what is something that you want to keep that is going to be good. You know, and sometimes not all the things that were good are going to stay good. And that's where you have that diversification of recognizing, hey, you know what, this worked for this amount of time, and then maybe I need to do something a little different.
And that's great advice. Roy, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess assuming that in a perfect world, there's always going to be, you know, a return on your investment, in a sense of whether it be stocks or whatever, or CDs, or, you know, anything interest bearing. I guess, you know, because we always talk about generational wealth, and that's where I always come back is, you know, the end of my life, I've accumulated all this wealth, and it's in all these things that are continually bringing money. Why don't we see more people just, you know, carrying on into this idea of just financial freedom, right? I mean, like, if I can build a pool of 500,000, and okay, I'm about to pass and I don't need it, and now I'm going to give it to the next kid, and they're going to keep adding to that pool, and maybe have two, so they split it in half. But it seems like it should have been an easy plan. It seems like we should all be $1 million Americans by now. With if our
we
parents
should all
were doing
be
this, you know?
the Roosevelts and Vanderbilts.
I mean, do you think it's inherently just it's working against us at this point? Like, is there a government thing that's you know, made it to where we can't get there, or do you think it's just people being people?
A lot of it is people being people. I'm a big proponent in trying to have people end what's called generational poverty. And the only way to end generational poverty is number one through savings. But the vehicle that allows people to end generational poverty is life insurance. The Roman Empire started life insurance with Greece and everything. So it's important to recognize that if you really want to end generational poverty, you can create a financial plan through life insurance that your downstream, you create a legacy. And then through that life insurance, you get trusts like the Roosevelts and the Vanderbilts did that, hey, this money goes into this trust. And now this trust buys life insurance on the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And all that wealth, there's a funny thing when people say, oh, you're a trust fund baby. Well, I'd love to be a trust fund baby. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon. In fact, I got beat with the silver spoon. So, I'd like to see the ability for people to create their future and how we can have a Star Trek-like situation where everybody is working towards the collective and nobody, everybody's getting their cups of coffee just by asking for it. You don't see Star Trek people exchanging money for it, right? So I think the best opportunity for people is to be able to figure out a way to create that generational wealth, and how you do that is through possibly life insurance or something like that. And that's ultimately how you create legacies for people.
So, I'll add something in there, only because you're right. I mean, it doesn't take much to get started, but it's the lack of resources for a lot of these folks that probably don't even understand how to get there, right? And education being a big part of it. And looking at the history in America, this is not to bring down any of our past history, but it really hasn't really helped a lot of those folks that are typically your minority or of color. And again, I'm not bringing race into the deal, but just statistics don't lie. So I can't just bring something out there. It's shown by the numbers over the last 100 some years.
Time. Yeah.
You see that disproportionately, you see a lot of these folks that probably not having that education and the financial freedom and or vehicles that can take you there, obviously continue to regress instead of progress, to Rohi's point, right? So by now, if in case this was the generational wealth wheel, then we should all be pretty much in a better place. But unfortunately, you don't see that. Again, social economic conditions obviously bring a big factor. So I like what you said, is trying to end generational poverty. And I think to some degree, America at one point was probably one of the richest countries and is one of the richest countries, even by standards of other countries are living off of $1 a day. Here, I mean, obviously, we're getting to a point where, even making a decent wage or the minimum wage is just barely scraping. It's like that person that's living in a different foreign country earning $2 a day, just enough to pay all of the stuff that your necessities, and then just have this much left over. How do I take this leftover? Because there's a lot of folks, especially migrant communities, that come and they do that.
Yeah.
They don't have their very expensive, luxurious cars and or homes, but yet you see that they're able to save. And it amazes me how they're able to save making this amount of money.
Making nothing, yeah. No,
So
it's a commitment.
It's a commitment.
And I think a lot of people, I deal with a lot of older people, which is, it's odd because I'll have my client base is between the ages of 20 and 35. And then 55 and older. It just seems like that 35 to 50 range, you got the kids, you got the cars, you got the house, you got more consumering, you got all this stuff. And it's so hard for that generational area, no matter when you were born. That particular age bracket is just very difficult for people. But my older generations, my silent generation, people who are still around, they lived through the Depression. And they saw the benefit of and the need to save, but they also saw the benefit and need to not have wants. There's needs and there's wants. And when you can differentiate what your needs are versus what your wants are. I think, to your point, a lot of people, when you don't have money, you find out very quickly what you need versus what you want. And those who recognize what you need and start actually only committing to what those needs are and eliminating your wants, you can see a big change in your life. I personally did that in 2009. I'm a train accident survivor, and I made $0. I had the Bank of Moms, supporting me, and all of a sudden I recognized that I was, as a financial planner, I would be telling people, "Hey, you got to save your money," and here I am, and I'm stacked up, and I don't have any. So it becomes one of those things that you recognize really fast. What do I need? I need a roof over my head. I need food. I need water. I need just these things. Do I need a Netflix subscription? No. Do I need that candy when at the drive-through? No. Do I need a soda? No. Water is still free in most places. So I tell people, hey, make one change. And if that one change is not getting a soda at the drive-through or at your, when you go out to eat, that enough is being able to change your needs to wants and wants to needs, and recognizing that, hey, I didn't get that soda. That now costs $3.50. You do that 5 times in a week. That's all of a sudden you got yourself $15 extra or more, right? So the way I look at it is being able to cut out your wants, which is really hard to do. I mean, we live in a very want society. But when you can cut out your wants and start focusing on what you have for your needs, you'll be surprised at how much money you can actually save. And you can redirect that to be able to have much nicer wants later.
As we're approaching the hour, and this is very good content, so I'm glad that if you're viewing, for the first time, or you're looking at us through, consecutively, you've been looking at our videos, continue to like, share, and subscribe, and more importantly, let us know your comments on topics like this, because bringing JP here, it really costs us an arm and a leg. I mean, we're going to get in debt. As a matter of fact, we may have to buy those dredgers and those pans just to pay him. Yeah. But this is a content that we want to bring so that we can, again, end with, to your point, generational poverty, and we're giving advice that's, you would pay an advisor a lot of money. So here, take advantage of what the content that we have here. Rohi, before we end, I did want to ask you a question. I get this question a lot. And because Rohi's in the gun industry and you are an enrolled agent, so you also provide a lot of tax advising, people ask me, hey, when I purchase a gun and ammunition, can I deduct that? And I have some mixed reviews, but I'll tell you what I've uncovered, and then you tell me if there is a way to be able to write off those expenses, because a lot of people want to know, hey, I bought a gun for self-defense, and I bought all this ammunition, and I go train. I want to know if I can write that off. And from what I understand is the IRS says, well, it's got to be ordinary and necessary for the type of business that you do. And I wanted you to elaborate or expand on that to see if, in fact, common folks that don't have a business but have a right to carry that firearm and a permit, and at the same time, they use it for the protection of their family. What are your thoughts there?
So, at the risk of the state coming to audit me and all my clients, I will say that federally there's no deduction because they eliminated all the unreimbursed business expenses in the tax code. Now that may change. We have a president now who established the current tax code we're in, and it's sunsetting this, I believe, at the end of this
2025,
year. So
correct.
we're going to see all sorts of changes in the tax code to where maybe these things come back. Who knows? So federally, it's not deductible. On the state side, that's subject to the 2% floor on your
Unreimbursed?
itemized unreimbursed business expenses. And so theoretically speaking, I try and tell people that, hey, of course, it has to be a need, it has to be a necessity, it has to be something that is required or some sort of form of your occupation that needs this. To that end, it's almost like service dogs and and security dogs and pets and animals and things like that. I can't, as a blanket answer, I always tell people, have a business of having something requiring you to do that, so it makes it a legitimate expense to yourself. If it's not a business, then have your employer or have a letter or something written that says, hey, I'm in this particular world where I need to protect myself, and this is something that we have to have as a occupational item. And that's proof enough to allow people to take that deductions. Of course, I have parole agents and sheriffs and CHP officers and security officers, and sure, we're going to take that because that's attributed to their job. An odd thing is being a financial planner, people would think, well, what do you need protection for? Well, I deal with a lot of money, and sometimes people give me checks, and nothing would be happier than old JP carrying a sidearm, and then that way, I'm not Brink's truck, but at the same time, I have sensitive data, and the last thing I need to be is bopped on the head somewhere. So there are a lot of, I guess you could say, gray areas, where you can do this. Overall, I would say that following the advice of your CPA or tax accountant for your particular situation is best, obviously. And then having some sort of letter or proof as to why you have to have this is the second most important.
And this would be, in any case, you're audited. You want to make sure you have something.
You have something
back,
to support yourself. That's exactly it.
Well, that certainly concludes that. Rohi, I'm going to allow you to respond to that because I know you have
My
a lot.
guns.
No, I mean, I guess my only question. So what I've heard over the years is the write-off part came more from declaring it as home security. So like your alarm system or anything in that regard. So I guess it was separating the idea of it's not obviously for your occupation or anything in that, or a business or anything in that regard, but they were saying I don't know tax deductions, but putting in the category of, like I said, like your alarm system is, I don't know if is your alarm system even tax deductible under, because it's home security.
Again, if it's your personal home, I can see that not being not
So the business
not a lot of
aspect
teeth in
is
that,
kind of
but I think it's more of a business. If you're working from home, and like he said, you can substantiate that there is a need because I handle this. Then again, a letter.
Well, I guess
and thanks to COVID, everybody has a home office now.
Yeah.
So
Well, I guess thinking
thinking
of it like, again, this is what I was always told is like, you change the fan in your house, it's an upgrade, it's a tax deduction. Again, that's what I told. I mean, you guys are the experts. I'm not the expert.
Yeah.
I'm just the guy that sells guns to people.
Yeah.
So,
And
so that was kind of like I guess the mythology there is if I can write off an improvement to my home, and if again home security, that would be an improvement to my home, then along with that, wanting home security would be a firearm.
If you can correlate that with the business running from home, then part of your utilities, part of the stuff that you pay, then that's potentially tax deductible because you are running your business from your home, in which you share this air conditioner, you have the filters, you have utilities, you have internet, and a certain square footage that allows for a deduction as a home office. Now, just having to change my filters for no business that I have there, then that's on a personal deal, unless it's some type of energy efficient, which is windows, doors, you go through solar, something like that, then I can see that. But other than that, I mean, is there something that I'm missing there, JP? Is there?
The main differentiations is obviously having some business use. And then the second aspect is any improvement you make to any personal property is an increase in basis to the property. That means that you bought it for $100,000, and you say you put a $10,000 room addition on, or new fans or whatever. Well, now your basis is $110,000. So when you go to sell that property later, you don't have as big of a gain on your taxes.
And that's a good differentiation.
Gotcha.
Thank you for bringing that up
Yeah.
because I think people expect to see the write-off on
Today.
that particular
Yeah.
calendar
Yeah,
year.
it's not today.
Okay.
But when you
Okay.
sell your home, and this is the other thing that the tax code provides is an exclusion. So that you want to have that basis higher because then you can exclude more of that money, especially if you're married and or you're single. Then you're limited to $250 if you're single and $500,000 when you're married. When you lived in that home for 2 of the last 5 years. But the good thing, like he said, the more you add, the higher the basis. And the less you have to, exclude, right? Because you want to exclude as much as you can, especially if you're single and you've sold this home where it tripled in value, then yeah, you don't want to have any capital gains. So again, any improvements that you do to your home, they'll benefit you when you go to
Especially
sell
in
them.
California,
Yeah.
where home prices just seemingly really outstrip the price.
And that would be another episode or maybe another show that I'd like to bring JP back and maybe start talking about the other arm, that he has, which is the tax advising. And, we've worked together in many different facets of our clienteles that we have. And obviously he's helped me quite a bit. Love to bring you back, maybe discuss some tax savings and bring another show with that as well.
I'd love to.
But for now, let's go ahead and give him an applause here. Thank you again for joining us. Really, really appreciated your advice. And again, a lot of it is with personal advice or personal experiences that we've had. Rohi, you've shared quite a bit, obviously, not only with your business, but in what you see. And again, I'm assuming that in the profession that you're in, you see this quite often with a lot of folks. So again, just want to give you a big shout out, a thank you. All those that are watching us for the first time, please continue to watch us. We have this every week. But again, look forward for some future content. With that, we thank you very much for watching, and we hope to see you next week.